Hi, it's Maria, and I'm doing a Maria Unfiltered, and this is in the Forgiveness to Love series, where my life exposed is uh, here. And so here we continue to explore the darkness that we must each face and why. And so, there are subconscious patterns that rule our emotions and overtake our free will. And yet, they're so subconscious that we're not aware of them actually. So, what if I told you that my sibling and my son, locked me out of my house and stole my clothes and my toothbrushes and my tampons and everything else, and my 3 computers and my photos and even my eyeglasses? Yes. And, I've told you this before, and they forged documents and they've lied in court and they basically made fools of my parents and me. And so, what if that was the least of it? Can you even imagine? And so, if that didn't seem to be enough, uh, because for them, they had to use every dirty trick in the book, really, in order to maliciously lie and choose and close, close every door and everything and everyone in my life. And so the reason why I'm kind of going through this again is just because so many people have been feeling this way. And so by letting you know that you are not alone and that I am here with you, and that no matter what you've gone through, you will understand the reason for it and you will overcome it. And so that is the beautiful message of what those of us who have been through so much share with one another, right? And so I'm just reminded as we talk about people going to any length, to cause drama and trauma to others. I'm thinking about my my ex, whose behavior um, of the sibling and son, that they carried it on, right? They carried out what the ex had started. And silly me, I guess I thought that there was really only one narcissist in a family, um, and in a lifetime, and yet that's certainly not true, as many of you know. But here's a little story, I guess, to better illustrate how crazy narcissistic behavior can be. When I was married in my marital house and I had 3 little boys, and right next door was another family with 4 little boys. And one day, I guess one of them had a little squirt gun, and so he squirted through over the hedges and squirted one of my kids. And then the other 2 little boys came out, and so then they got their little squirt guns. And so it was this squirt gun fight, or maybe it was even water balloons at the time, between these 7 little boys, or seven. Yeah, the neighbors were a few years older than my kids, but still, they were in elementary school and maybe junior high. Anyway, so they all squirted, and so my ex happened to pull in the driveway during this time, and he kind of amped everyone up, right? And so he kind of raised the bar, and it was like, now we're going to get him. And he's like rubbing his hands together, going, oh my gosh, and so he was like getting ready for the kill. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could see this from my kitchen window. And so he's like yelling, we're going to get him. And so he actually got a hose with a really powerful nozzle spray on it. And he just started blasting them. And it turned into, this little playful squirt gun fight turned into like World War III. And it became very malicious. It wasn't playful anymore, but it was mean spirited. And so sometimes people they just get so caught up in the drama and in the whole uh, scene that they kind of lose their minds, and they just want to pummel the other people. And that's kind of what I saw in family court. It as I wrote that letter, disclosing my experience in family court and what I saw and what I heard and all the threats that were made against me. Um, what it was is as I would walk by the different courtrooms, I would see husbands and wives kind of huddled, each with their own attorney, and then I would see them just like throwing daggers at each other's with their eyes, and just hating each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they came to a dinner party of mine, last year, and here they are. They're hating each other, and they're taking each other to the cleaners in every way that they could, and saying all these horrible things, and their attorneys are, everybody's in on this, I'm bigger, better, meaner, and crazier than you. But that's kind of what I saw, and that's what I wrote about, that it doesn't have to be that way. We really do need legal reform because it's shockingly painful to families, and shockingly destructive to our country, to the world, when families are so destabilized and families then become so fractured and people end up hating people, those with whom they should be most closely aligned, right? Because they are a family. They lived together, they loved each other, they had sex, they made love, they shared their innermost secrets, they were best friends. I mean, how could you turn on somebody like that? I don't know, but anyway, I know that my family was destroyed, and so my kids were poisoned to hate their own mother, and I'm sure they never saw it coming. But it can be an insidious kind of a thing. You just start saying mean things about someone, and in case my children heard horrible lies about me, and then all of a sudden, you become rather desensitized to it, and you start believing it, and you're like, oh yeah, I know, she probably did that, and because I heard she did this, and so why not, why didn't she do that? Of course. And so you think, oh my gosh. But they were kind of innocent victims, and ultimately they suffered the diabolical effects of the War of the Georges, which is, was the War of the Roses. Well, this was the War of the Georges. And with the likes of kind of like the Stockholm Syndrome, I'm sure you've heard of that. But it's where victims um, are so traumatized that they end up being brainwashed, and they actually identify with their perpetrators, and they don't even take on the victim mentality anymore. And so it's very prevalent in cult situations, and so ultimately, when they are forced to stay, they choose to stay even when they are granted their freedom, and so because they feel badly for their captors, so to speak. In any event, if um, in my family, family was pitted against family, which happens in any type of dissension like that. And they were pitted against family to steal and to lie and to cheat and to betray. And so, you know, it's like when somebody lies about someone, you lie about one person to another, and eventually you lie to so many different people that everyone ends up hating everyone else, and there's no one left. And so it becomes like a poison stew of sorts, with the carnage lining the street. Well, I have another little story for you. But my sweet mom used to call my sibling the Kutala. And the kutala is nothing more than a Greek word for a uh, a wooden spoon, and they come in all shapes and sizes. You can have the ones um, with the big part at the bottom, that stirs it up, other than the handle, or it can be kind of flattened, or it could be kind of concave, or whatever. But anyway, it's a great big the one my mother had was a great big supersized heavy duty wooden spoon that she wouldn't use for cooking. I think she would just kind of hold it up. And maybe her mother, maybe she got it from her mother too. I don't know. Anyway, it was just kind of like more of a joke than anything else. Um, but it mixes up everything, right? And so it makes everything turn into like this big borscht or big poison, big stew, where, and so in reality, what it is in terms of the human behavior, it really it allows one jealous person to deliberately hurt others and kind of make everyone miserable, right? So then everybody ends up hating everyone else. Anyway, let me tell you, I've experienced more daily torture than you could possibly imagine. And so the notion of a kutala is not all that foreign to me. I'll tell you that much. But at various points in time, my children were ripped from my arms and they were taught to hate me. And what are we at now? 2022. And so my children, I haven't seen them since 2005. And so, they believed lies over truth, over justice, over kindness. Yeah. And, and over a mother who truly loves them more than anything they could possibly imagine, right? I mean, for 17 years, they refused to speak to me, all four of them. And so let me tell you, my heart goes out to them, all four of them, because I just couldn't imagine not being with my mom. Or, God forbid, not talking to her if she were still alive. And so, I talk to her now and she's in a different realm. And so, yes, their lives have been much harder than mine. And I have nothing but unconditional love for all my children. But it's only when human beings are so disconnected from themselves and from one another and from God and from their creator, um, that they could even entertain the slightest notion of hurting another human being, because that would never ever enter the consciousness of most of us, right? And so you see, the dark dwells in betrayal and in humiliation and in intimidation and defamation and isolation and basically in pain. And so the dark is filled with anger and hatred and jealousy and envy, and the dark is magnetized by these low vibrational energies, right? While the light is repelled by them. The light shines brightly. The light is free. The light is good. The light is pure. And the light is true. Yes, the light is the light of God and the light within each one of us. And it is truly within you. However, you may choose to deny it if you wish. We all have free will. And so it's whatever we choose to accept. And so light energy, is to be embraced. It's to be nurtured. It's to be, because it nurtures us. It nurtures you. And so it is, what can I say? It is it's the keys to Tut's tomb, right? Because it has all the riches you could ever ask for and ever want to bask in, right? There's nothing more for you to know other than you are love. You are light. You are forgiveness. You are everything you've ever wanted and more. You are the all of it. And there's nothing that you are not. And you're here to forgive yourself and to forgive others. And you're here to love yourself and to love others. And I know, forgiving others is not easy. And I know that loving yourself is not easy. Forgiving yourself or others is not easy. Sometimes forgiving ourselves is actually more difficult than forgiving others, as difficult as that may be. And then loving ourselves. Because, if we don't love ourselves, we aren't capable of loving another. And I think that is one of the most important teachings of the Christ. Um, and so, anyway, we must love ourselves. We are here on a journey of self love. And so, we are here to be an example to others. Yeah. As the highest version of ourselves, right? And so, when I think of the son, my son, after stealing millions of dollars, and he sent me instructions saying to never bother him again when I asked if I could have my home, or at least if I could live in it rather than live in a car. And so he said his aunt had already given it to him. And even though he was in London living, um, yeah, I couldn't have it. And so I thought, oh, that's really weird. But anyway, I wasn't sure exactly. I was always proud of my children. I wasn't proud of him then. Um, for a child to tell his mother, who was always there for him during his darkest, deepest, most trying times of his life, where he feared for his life, and he would put me out on the street. So that son is to be pitied, actually, because how can you not feel sorry for someone who is so disconnected from themselves that they would wallow in such darkness, right? And so, believe me, I understand. I've been told that there's a huge network, that was put in place with my money to plot my sacrifice. And so I don't specifically call him out and say he's the one that did it. No, I think it's a much larger group and a much more powerful group than he would be. Uh, but it reminded me of like Jesus on the cross, as they plotted the sacrifice of my parents, really. And so the bottom line is that we live in a world where human beings are knowingly or unknowingly part of a giant cover up. And um, there is so much greed in the world, and there are so many crimes going on that the truth is hidden. And so there are lies, manipulation, blackmail, all kinds of horrible behaviors to steal fortunes. And remember, I talk about my one big fortune, but you know what? I had three fortunes. So I'm holding up three. I'm saying three, but I'm holding up four fingers. It's three, really. And so there were three fortunes, and the likes of which few will ever know. And at the same time, I lived in a car for 9 months, and I still don't have anything really other than the grace and the kindness of friends with whom I am staying. But when you take somebody and you not only strip them of all their resources, but you strip them of any means in order to earn a living. And that's the key, because you know what? A lot of people have lost things. They've lost it in stock market crashes. They've lost it because, they've lost their homes in fires or tornadoes or illnesses or whatever, they've or bad investments. And so people they lose their resources, but generally they're able to pull themselves back up and make a living. Well, in my situation, my family was so diabolical that they basically shut every door. And because they were on my phone 24/7 and on my email, they knew every time I reached out for a job, or every time I talked to someone, or wanted to work for them, or wanted to do something, and even upload videos or download videos or whatever, and work on a website, things would just, I couldn't even get, somebody said, oh, why don't you sign up for PayPal? And so I did. But you know what? It never connected to my bank account. There was never a way that it actually went through. So then somebody said, why don't you do Cash App? Of course, that didn't go through. Um, every application I made for any type of employment, that didn't go through. My website had more than enough issues. Things would just never go through. Things would get erased. Things were just a mess. Um, and so even now with these videos, it's taking me forever to upload them. And as I mentioned to you, I've been told that my audience is so ridiculously small because my family doesn't want this information out. And I guess if I had done some of the really horrible things that they've done, I sure wouldn't want anybody to know. But you know what? That's just too bad because we are living in an area of transparency. And so if you don't want people to know the horrible things you're contemplating, then don't do it. Don't contemplate it and choose to be better. Choose to be a better version of yourself. Don't stoop so low because the truth always comes out. Thank you, God. Yes, absolutely. But we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and yet you know what? We're not so free and we're not so brave. So that's I talk about freedom. Oh, I just thought of something. I found out that there was a plot and a plan to put me in jail on a July 4th several years ago. And it was when my children and dozens of my ex's relatives actually flew down to Florida from Chicago. And so they actually sunbathed on my private beach by my condo. And they actually walked right in front of me getting into my building. And I was just like so shocked because I'd look and it's like, oh, there's my ex's first cousin. And, she had been at my house how many times. And, I had invited them all over for holidays and they would come over for Friday night pizza. And I mean, I just knew them so well and knew the guys they were dating and all of it. Anyway, and so they were all around my building, but everyone acted like they didn't know me. And then when I went to Publix, or was it Albertsons? Ran to the store in my car, and I was driving. I had just gotten back in my car and I was driving out of the parking lot, and it was either like, I think it was a Walgreens, and my sister and maybe it was her boyfriend, they walked right in front of my car. And I know that the timing, I mean, it just couldn't have been such a coincidence because I also saw my other son who was rollerblading down Gulf Boulevard just as I was driving on my way to the store. So they all knew where I was from the GPS of my car and I guess my phone, Google Maps or whatever. And so they strategically were right in front of me. And I had heard afterwards that the police were there ready and waiting to arrest me if I said anything. And I mean, when I saw my daughter crossing the street, well, first of all, when I saw my son rollerblading, I was, gonna like start honking and stop the car and pull over and see him. But when I saw my daughter walk right in front of my car going into this Walgreens drugstore, I was going to like slam on the brakes and run out there and just say, "Oh, Melissa, it's your mom. I love you so much. I've missed you so much. I can't believe this is really you. You're here." And I'm just so happy to see you. And they were going to arrest me and use as an excuse or use the reason an unlawful order of protection that in Chicago I was told was so unlawful, and that all I had to do was go before a judge and he would just get rid of that because that was just ridiculous. It was this a mother not to ever contact her children. But then it was so ridiculous in other ways too. It was like, well, you can't contact anyone in the business community, and you can't contact anyone in the filial community, which could be relatives, but it could also be anybody related to a charity. And I was big into doing I was on a lot of boards and doing, giving a lot of money. And and so doing a lot of charity work. And so it was that, and also it was what was the other thing? The other category was like any type of religious thing. So I couldn't even go and talk to a priest and tell them what was the crazy stuff that was going on and ask for any kind of guidance. I wasn't allowed to share my story. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody what anybody was doing to me. So, like the FBI had told me, it's just like, if you don't say it, um, then no one's going to know the truth. So you've got to speak up. And so thank God thank God that you are listening, that you have tuned into these videos. And I'm so grateful to you. And so, because if anything ever happened to me, it wouldn't be a coincidence. There are no coincidences, but it wouldn't be, some kind of like a bizarre happening. It would have been very strategic and very well plotted. And I don't have any cardiac issues other than the poison that is fed to me whenever they can do that. But anyway, it was this reunion, this family reunion is really a twisted family reunion of sorts, for sure. And so it was, they were going to celebrate. They were going to celebrate if I was behind bars on 4th of July, Independence Day. And so where I'd be like jailed and sacrificed, and who knows if I'd be killed in there. I mean, it happens, right? And so anyway, I just couldn't imagine that my children would delight in seeing their mother um, wrongly accused of stuff. But then again, they don't know what's wrongly or what's rightly uh, the accusations, right? Because they've been so brainwashed. But anyway, it's all just too bizarre to imagine. But when you waste really 2 decades of your life in litigation that you don't want to have anything to do with, it's just that they keep coming after you, and so you have to defend yourself, which is such a waste. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of it's a waste of your life, really. But and especially when you're dealing with a deck of cards that's marked, right? Um, because there was no way I was being dealt a winning hand, right? Because everything seemed to be going in not in my favor. And so, and I also knew that every time I went to court, or every time they had me go to court and I lost, which was every time, um, there were like celebration, celebration picnics, barbecues, dinners, and the whole dirty group was toasting one another and for sacrificing a woman. And so who just wanted to leave an abuser. After 20 some years of him threatening to kill her, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And so, but of course, you know what? I didn't want my children to know. And sometimes, when we do not tell the truth right away and we keep secrets, it can be used against us because people don't know all that we've been going through. And so that's a matter of self-love. And that's what that boils down to. It is a matter of taking care of ourselves and putting ourselves first. And if you know that someone is out there trying to hurt you, you're not going to doormat yourself. You're not going to allow that. You are going to stand up for yourself. You are going to speak up for yourself. And so, but because I didn't want to embarrass our family. I didn't want police cars in our driveway, when he'd like walk by and push me over or something like that. I could have called the police, but then you'd have like all these squad cars in the front, and the neighbors would see it, and my children, would hear the commotion, and it wasn't. I just didn't think that was the right thing to do to my children. But you know, I don't know. It was kind of like I read something the other day that was really horrible. And it was like, well, I just thought about sometimes how we sacrifice ourselves, and we can be like lambs on the spit. But how, like, there's actually, like, people do rituals and they use blood, and then they sacrifice people for their organs, and they can sell those organs for huge amounts of money. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I am so far out of it. Um, I don't know about that stuff. I don't want to know about that stuff. I mean, you know, worked on cadavers when I was in graduate school, but they had already transitioned, and that was for science. We had to know about the human body. We had to know about the anatomy and the physiology and the microbiology and all of that that relates to the human body to move forward in our careers. And so, but in terms of the those disgusting rituals, that's really too hard to imagine. And for some people, life is cheap, right? And so their values are so screwed up that people have kind of become um, vacuous. They've become shells of themselves. Sometimes, have you ever noticed, if you look at someone and, like, it's like their eyes, there's like nothing there. They are so far gone that it's actually creepy. And so um, it was, anyway, that was a tangent. But when we talk about how I was talking about how my children were involved in celebrations, and that, certainly that they didn't they didn't instigate this, but they and hopefully they didn't even go, but the rest of the people went. And so when I think of my children, how they actually, I was living in Ashland, Oregon, and um and when I looked on the internet and I saw my son, my second son, he was living on Ashland Street. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a sign. I'm going to just go for broke. I'm going to take whatever money I had and I am going to rent a car and I am going to go to Santa Monica and find Ashland Street and I'm going to see my son. And so I did. I packed it all up and I went down there, and he wasn't there. No one answered the door. It was a beautiful home. And there was a package outside, and there was, and his first name is Scott. And so there was a package to Mr. and Mrs. Scott. And I thought, oh, that's really weird. And then there were these two little old ladies sitting on the corner, and I didn't know if they were, but afterwards, the more I thought about it, I thought, oh, that was a setup. They were to be there, and they were to talk to me. So they were like, can we help you? And I said, oh, you know what? I'm looking for my son, and I think he lives here because this is the address. And so they said, oh no, it's a nice family that lives there and they have children and the father's name is Bradley or something like that. And he's not a doctor, he's in business or he's a broker or something like that. And so I thought, oh wow, they didn't even want their mother to come and visit them. And so I guess I shouldn't have been so surprised by that. But yeah, I was. And anyway, I couldn't find them. And I kept hoping that maybe they would want to talk. They would want to know the truth of their lives, and they would want to make peace with it and move forward, because you can't have that kind of heavy heart. And certainly the guilt. They must have guilt because they were raised to be very kind and loving human beings. So to have that kind of animosity within, that burning vengeance, and that anger, must be very difficult for them. And so I was hoping that I might be able to help them, to help dissipate some of that hostility, actually. But in any event, no, I never saw I did see my son. I think I saw him running on the beach, but I just wasn't fast enough. It was like, and I wasn't fast enough to just yell, Scotty, Scotty, but he would have been long gone. And another time, I think I saw him riding his bike really fast, and there was no way I could catch him. And I saw my third son, I think, driving a big black SUV. Mm, and I went to his office because he has a company. So I went to his office, but um, like the doors were locked and there was nobody there. And so anyway, I went there several times, and I actually left probably, oh, I don't know, he's got like 4 different emails, and I sent him a lot of emails and phone calls, and called his secretaries and called people at his company. Um, and left them contact information. And I said, this is his mom, and I would just love to talk to him. Never heard back from any of them. But I did, as I mentioned to you in yesterday's video, I did see my daughter's wedding. I saw pictures of it on Facebook. And then I saw, and she looked beautiful. And I saw my 2 grandchildren. I think they're her children. And I think I saw them on Instagram, and that was really exciting. But today's Mother's Day. I don't know when you're going to watch this, but today is Mother's Day, and so I guess I'm kind of feeling a little, I'm glad that that I have 4 beautiful children, and I don't have regrets over the way I raised my children, because I taught them to be decent and kind and loving and smart and compassionate and respectful and responsible human beings. And so I know that, however that's buried, because divorce will do that to anyone. But however that's buried, I know that they hold those qualities deep inside of their beings, and that someday, I hope it's during this lifetime actually, but someday, they will appear as the fine human beings that I know they are. And so, but we'll see. Right now, they are enshrouded in darkness, um, because no one in the light behaves the way that whole group. And I'm not singling them out, but that whole group. And I don't know just how how influenced they are, and how free they are to contact me, because maybe they've been threatened and they're not allowed to. Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, um, what was I going to say? I think I talked about, did I talk about public storage or easy storage? Whatever. My sibling has stolen my identity, and she stole a lot of the props and the things. Well, I've been told that it was her that stole it, but yes, all of a sudden I went there, and the storage unit was broken into, and all my stuff, things were gone. Some stuff was just trashed on the floor. And then I heard that she actually wears my wigs and my costumes, so I assume that it's her. But again, I didn't see it, wasn't there, don't care. But there's that, the whole identity thing. But what else can I tell you? When I think about the inheritance, and I think, I have 4 children, right? And so one of my children inherited millions and millions. Well, the 3 others didn't. And my father had 2 daughters, and one of his daughters inherited millions and millions, and the other one didn't. And so you see, you have one daughter and one grandchild who inherited everything. Meanwhile, you have three other grandchildren who were much more favored than that grandchild. And then you have a daughter who is actually more favored than the other daughter, and she got nothing. So is that a crime of revenge or vengeance or jealousy or I don't know. I don't know what that is. So would you rather be the one that was um, maybe that was a little more loved, or would that create such darkness in you that you would want to destroy? But I don't know. I think that's just a little weird. It's quite the travesty of justice, I'd say. But it's been brought to my attention that um, the possibly um, possibly in the trust it was rewritten, about the $1,000 to go to each one of my other three children and me to get $1,000. And so um, it was actually brought to my attention that perhaps they were told, my other three children were told, oh, hey, you're really only supposed to get 1,000, but if you never have anything to do with your mother, we'll give you 10,000 or we'll give you 100,000 or whatever for now. And so if you shun your mother and then have nothing to do with her so that she uh, doesn't, so that she's not able to fight for what's hers, then we'll just keep giving it to you on the sly. So that could also, have that could have played a part in that too. And so I don't know if I want to get into this whole litigation thing, but I did write some notes on that and it's talking about and it was kind of summarizing the whole litigation thing, which from 1996 to 2001 was the divorce, and it was like 4 years and 400 court dates or something, and there were two huge trials. One was the custody trial, and one was the financial trial. And then there was, after that, it was post-trial motions and stuff, and then there was, then I wrote the letter. So then they sued me for harassment for the order of protection, which is how they were going to arrest me on July 4th if I approached my children. And then, which is totally unlawful. And then, oh, and I remember during that order of protection trial, they asked me why I sent the letter, and I said because I was truly afraid for my um, life. And so this kind of old judge that ended up retiring in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he had a reputation of always kind of having a liquid lunch. And so I remember when they said, well, she was threatened. My attorney said, well, she's been threatened for years and years, and she was truly afraid that he was going to make good on that. And so this old judge says, so what's the big deal? Maybe she deserved it. And it was like, oh my gosh. But so that was 2005. Then 2006 was the huge defamation trial over the same letter that I wrote. But of course, it was a different letter that they used as evidence. And the basis of that was that he would lose. He claimed that he would lose $16 million of earnings by the time he retired, if because of the letter I sent. And so he couldn't really prove that, especially because he had been fired from so many different firms, and he had kind of gone around to different financial institutions. But he was actually he had actually his company had actually been bought out at that time. And so he actually made a bunch of money. The same time that he sued me for that, the timing was really weird. The same time that he sued me for the defamation, and he said that it was because he couldn't get a job and he wasn't working at that moment. And he couldn't get a job, and so therefore he blamed me for that. But meanwhile, he had just gotten this huge umbrella Um, and what do they call that? I just have lost um, my train of thought. That huge, what did they call it? Well, anyway, it was a buyout. And so he had just, oh, a golden parachute. Maybe that's what it's called. And so he had just gotten that. And so he wasn't working, and he certainly didn't need to work. And yet, they said, oh, well, she's the reason why he can't get a job. And so anyway, that was that. And then right after that was I was told to file bankruptcy because of that silly verdict. And so the judge there said, well, if you were really, really afraid of him, then I'll erase that judgment. Um, but if I think that you just did it because you were, vengeful or something, I'm not going to let it go. So then I heard my attorneys told me that she had a business relationship with the opposing counsel, and they said, you're going to lose. And I said, okay. So then she said, well, she probably wasn't afraid of him anyway because he didn't kill her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be sitting right here, right? So that was really weird. And then, of course, there was the 2010 estate litigation where I filed to protect my inheritance. But my attorneys then, I did have attorneys then, but they quit right away because they said, oh, you know what? There are bigger guns on the outside, on the other side, and this is just going to get too crazy, and we don't want any part of it. So given that barrage of litigation and the stalking and the harassment and um, all that stuff, I left Chicago. And so where was I going to go? So I ended up going to Brazil. Well, I moved to Florida, and then after that, I ended up going to Brazil to pray. And so I was that was a good thing for me to go there. But it was during that time that they said, oh, well, she's not here, so we're just going to change the locks and steal everything. And so they did that. But that happens in divorce, doesn't it? And then I mentioned yesterday about my son having an alias. And so it's PG Scott, which is for his name, and then his father is Scott. So his initials are PG, and so he's pretending to be Scott, so it's PG Scott. But anyway, that's about all I really want to say about all this stuff. It's this is all just kind of the tip of the iceberg of how our legal system enables people to just destroy, self-destruct, and really ruin their lives. I mean, for many, many years. And there's just no reason for it. Because when we are able to see our adversary as ourself, we're not going to stoop so low as to have all of this, all these malevolent um, feelings and all this malevolent behavior and um, these this malignant course of action and all this, malice and however, there's so many words I could use to describe all this stuff. But that's about it, I think. I think I'm going to wrap it up for now and talk to you again tomorrow. And I hope I didn't rant and rave. I feel like I did, but I just want you to know that all of this stuff is just part of being a resident of planet Earth at this point in time. And things are changing. They really are. The energy of the planet really is shifting. And so this is a temporary situation. And it really is to make us see all this yuck and just go, oh, I'm not going to deal with this. And then things will change. And we're going to say we're not going to participate in that behavior. And we're also not going to sacrifice ourselves for other people, right? It's all about self-love, and it's about forgiveness too, because whatever they want to do, just forgive them and love them from afar. Yeah, and just get over it. All right. So anyway, I love you, and I will see you again soon. Good night.